Imagine you wake up, you check your bank account one morning, and $23 million is just gone.
Just completely vanished.
Right, gone. There's no receipt. There's no record of a transfer. It has simply vanished from the ledger.
Which is terrifying.
It is. And then, while you're actively panicking over that, you realize you've also somehow accidentally paid your employees $200 million more than they actually earned.
Yeah, that's the kind of day that ruins a company.
Exactly. I mean, for a normal business, that is game over. The doors close, the lights go out, everyone goes home. But as we're going to see in today's deep dive, this isn't some hypothetical stress test for a corporation.
No, not at all.
This is the actual reality of public finance.
No.
And believe it or not, it is the hidden reason why the house you might want to buy just got like 20% more expensive.
It's a stunning realization for a lot of people, I think. We tend to look at government financial audits as just, this dry exercise in accounting.
Oh, absolutely. Spreadsheets and binders.
Right, just columns of numbers that only bureaucrats in back rooms care about. But those spreadsheets are quite literally the blueprints for how a society functions.
Yeah.
When the math doesn't work out on paper, the physical world around us, it just stalls out.
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive. Today, we're looking at an article from Jamaica Homes News, and it breaks down the Government of Jamaica Audit Committee's annual report for the 2024/2025 financial year.
A very heavy title.
I know. The phrase Audit Committee's annual report sounds like basically the ultimate cure for insomnia.
It really does.
But stick with us here, because today we're going to connect the dots between that dry, bureaucratic accounting and the very real physical roof over your head.
Which is such a crucial connection to make.
You might think public finance is just background noise, but we are going to show you how government spreadsheets literally dictate where people can live, how communities grow, and exactly what real estate costs.
Because when we talk about a housing market, we usually focus on the obvious metrics.
Right, mortgage rates.
Exactly. Mortgage interest rates, or the global cost of lumber, or the demographics of how many buyers are out there looking for homes.
The stuff that makes the evening news.
Right. But what this report reveals is the hidden architecture underneath all of that. The administrative machinery, the paperwork.
The gears running the whole thing.
Precisely. And when that machinery starts dropping gears, the impact on the everyday person's wallet is just profound.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the headline numbers in this audit are honestly staggering. We really need to start by exploring the sheer scale of the financial leaks reported here.
They are massive.
It makes this whole abstract idea of public finance feel incredibly tangible. So the audit found over $23 million in unaccounted funds.
Right.
But that is completely eclipsed by the next finding, which is over $200 million in salary overpayments.
It's a breathtaking number.
I just have to pause there. I mean, how does a government accidentally overpay salaries on that scale? $200 million isn't like a minor glitch in a payroll app?
No, it's not a rounding error. What's fascinating here is that from an auditing perspective, a number that large points directly to a breakdown in the fundamental mechanics of human resources and payroll systems.
Okay, so a systemic issue.
Exactly. The source material notes this is heavily concentrated in places like the education ministry. And to understand how this happens, you really have to look at the mechanism itself.
Walk us through that.
Sure. So in a massive government agency, you have incredibly high turnover. Teachers retire, administrators transfer to different districts, temporary staff finish up their short-term contracts.
Makes sense. People are always moving around.
Right. But if the local school or the regional office doesn't immediately communicate that termination or that retirement to the central payroll department.
Oh, wow. The checks just keep printing.
They just keep printing.
So let me get this straight. If a teacher retires in June, the central system might just keep cutting checks for them until, like, December, simply because the two departments aren't talking to each other.
That is exactly the kind of disconnect we're looking at here. Or, you have the issue of what they call ghost workers.
Ghost workers, that sounds ominous.
It's a term for people who remain on the payroll long after they've left the organization. Sometimes this happens because of legacy software systems.
Oh, the classic outdated government tech.
Exactly. Systems that require manual updates across, say, 3 entirely different databases. And if just one of those databases isn't updated by a clerk, the payment automatically goes out.
That's wild. And I imagine clawing that money back is basically impossible.
It's an administrative nightmare. Think about it. If someone has been accidentally overpaid for 2 straight years, they've likely already spent the money.
Right, they thought it was a raise, or they just didn't notice.
Exactly. The government can't just easily recoup $200 million by asking nicely. It's largely gone.
That makes a lot of sense. It's less about someone, maliciously pressing the wrong button on a keyboard and more about a system where the off switch is just fundamentally broken.
Precisely.
And nobody is stationed at the exit door to verify who is actually still working there. Imagine trying to run a household like that, like accidentally paying your rent twice for a whole year and somehow never noticing your bank account draining.
It would be disastrous for a family.
It would. And that leads directly to the core issue the auditors flagged here, right? These systemic weaknesses in internal controls.
Yes, internal controls is a bit of a jargon term, I'll admit.
A very accountant-sounding phrase.
Very much so. But in practice, it just means the rules and the automated guardrails that ensure a dollar gets to where it legally belongs.
Okay.
The report also highlights millions of dollars in transactions that were processed without adequate documentation.
Meaning no receipts, no invoices.
Exactly. And this points to a failure in procurement processes, which is just the fancy term for how the government buys things.
Right.
If you're buying supplies or hiring a vendor and the invoice doesn't match the purchase order, the internal controls are supposed to instantly freeze the payment.
The guardrail kicks in.
Right. So when millions of dollars are moving without that required paperwork, it means those guardrails are either totally missing or managers are actively bypassing them just to speed things up.
So a lack of oversight causes money to just hemorrhage out of the system.
Exactly.
And that is money that presumably could have been used for urban renewal programs or social support systems or housing initiatives designed to help lower-income families access land.
It's a huge opportunity cost.
It just evaporates. But, okay, surely the money that stays in the bank is safe, right?
Well, you would think so.
Let's look at the infrastructure budget, because the article moves from these broad financial leaks into the specific impact on the ministry responsible for economic growth and infrastructure development.
A very critical ministry.
Very. And the auditors reported that within this specific ministry, nearly $100 million in project spending could not be verified. And over $50 million was tied up in incomplete projects. But honestly, the number that really stopped me was this one. More than $136 million in funds remained entirely unspent.
Yes, due to delays and weak contract management.
Right. Unspent.
That is a critical figure. Unspent funds in an infrastructure budget are a massive red flag for the entire economy.
Okay, wait. I have to play devil's advocate here.
Sure.
If $136 million is unspent, isn't that a good thing?
How do you mean?
Well, at least it wasn't paid out to ghost workers or lost in some undocumented shady transaction. It's still sitting securely in the government's bank account. Doesn't that mean they're essentially saving money?
It is a really logical assumption to make, especially when we think about our own personal savings account.
Right. If I don't spend my budget, I'm happy.
Exactly. But in the world of public development, unspent money is often just as damaging as lost money.
Really? How so?
The key concept to understand here is predictability. When a government allocates $136 million for infrastructure, that money isn't meant to just sit there and be saved.
It has a job to do.
Exactly. It's earmarked for specific critical projects. We're talking about roads, drainage systems, water treatment facilities, public utilities.
The physical foundation of a place.
Yes. And in a developing economy, especially a small island economy like Jamaica, these infrastructure projects are the absolute backbone of land expansion.
Okay, I'm tracking with you.
So unspent money isn't savings. It is a clogged artery in the development pipeline.
I think I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
Because you obviously can't build a new housing development if you literally can't legally or physically get to the land.
Precisely the issue. Let's trace the mechanism of how this actually impacts the housing market.
Yeah, let's do that.
Suppose the government budgets funds to build a major drainage system in a brand new development zone. But because of weak contract management, which might mean the legal team takes 6 months just to finalize the vendor agreement.
Or they mess up the bidding process.
Right. The tender process is botched. They have to redo it. And so the funds just sit there frozen.
And the drainage doesn't get built.
It doesn't get built.
Yeah.
And without that public drainage system, a private developer who is looking to build a neighborhood on the adjacent land, they cannot break ground.
Because it's not safe.
Right. The land remains entirely unusable because it would just flood.
Oh, wow. The ripple effects of that are enormous. So the release of new land for homes is entirely bottlenecked by a delayed signature on a government contract.
It throws construction timelines for private developers into complete chaos. And when developers face delays, their costs absolutely skyrocket.
Time is money.
Exactly. A developer usually buys that land using finance money. If they have to wait 2 extra years for the government to build the access road or the drainage, they're paying 2 extra years of compound interest on their massive commercial loans.
That's brutal.
They're paying holding costs, property taxes, extended labor retainers, all while producing absolutely nothing.
And a developer isn't going to just absorb those millions of dollars in extra interest payments out of the goodness of their heart.
Definitely not.
They're going to pass every single cent of those costs right down the line to the buyer.
Every single time. An administrative delay in a government office that results in unspent infrastructure funds directly translates into a more expensive house for a family trying to enter the market.
That is such a direct connection.
It really is. The lack of predictability destroys market confidence. If investors don't believe the infrastructure will actually be finished on time, they simply won't invest in the housing projects.
Which means no new houses get built.
Right. The supply of homes stays artificially low while the demand keeps rising, which drives prices up even further.
That paints an incredibly stark picture. The paperwork sitting on a desk literally dictates the price of the concrete going into the ground.
It really does.
Okay, so we've talked about the cash. We've got money leaking out through bad payroll and money sitting frozen and unspent in infrastructure accounts. But here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, the physical assets.
Yes, because the audit didn't just look at cash, it looked at physical objects.
Right.
The report raised massive alarms about the management of government assets, flagging nearly $92 million in unrecorded equipment and inconsistencies in the asset registers.
It's a huge number.
I genuinely struggled to wrap my head around this when I read it. How do you lose track of $92 million of physical stuff? We aren't talking about, like, a missing box of printer paper or a few staplers here.
No, not at all.
We are talking about heavy machinery, vehicles, server racks, surveying equipment, stuff you can touch.
To understand how millions of dollars of physical assets effectively turn into ghosts, we have to look at what an asset register actually is in practice.
Okay, what is it?
It's not just some simple Excel spreadsheet that an intern updates once a year. In a massive organization, the asset register is the only definitive proof that an item exists, who legally owns it, and where it is physically located right now.
So it's the master map of everything.
It's exactly. Managing public infrastructure without a meticulous asset register is like trying to run a massive national delivery company without knowing how many trucks you own.
Or which drivers even have the keys.
Right.
So, okay, let me see if I have this right. If a department buys a $500,000 bulldozer for a road project, and then they loan it out to a different municipality for a week, and nobody updates the tracking software,
Yes.
the bulldozer technically just ceases to exist on paper.
That is exactly how it happens. It might be sitting in a municipal lot somewhere, just rusting away in the rain.
Oh, man.
It might have been quietly sold off by an opportunistic employee, or, honestly, it might be actively used every single day by a road crew that has no idea it's officially classified as unrecorded.
They're just driving a ghost bulldozer.
Exactly. But from an accounting and planning perspective, the asset is gone.
Right, because the central office can't see it.
Right. And if the central government doesn't know it already have that bulldozer, it might spend another $500,000 buying a completely redundant one next year.
Which is just a staggering waste of money.
It is. The source material emphasizes that effective land administration relies heavily on accurate records and reliable data. If you don't even know what equipment you have, you cannot maintain the infrastructure you've already built, let alone try to plan for new developments.
And the article also points out that the auditors flagged major weaknesses in IT systems and disaster recovery arrangements.
Yes, as severe continuity risks.
Which just completely compounds the problem, right? If your tracking software is outdated and the server crashes and you don't have a reliable disaster recovery backup,
You're in serious trouble.
your entire digital record of who owns what land and where the heavy machinery is could just vanish. You are operating completely blind at that point.
It's a very precarious position. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it reveals something even more concerning.
More concerning than missing bulldozers.
Yes, the loss of physical assets, the digital vulnerabilities, the unspent infrastructure funds. These are really all just symptoms of a much deeper issue regarding institutional capacity.
What do you mean by that?
Well, auditors find problems in every organization. That's their job. Finding the problem is the easy part.
True.
The most alarming statistic in this entire report isn't a dollar amount at all. It is a percentage.
Okay, hit me with it.
The audit noted a massive decline in how quickly these government ministries actually respond to the audit recommendations themselves. The response rate fell to 33%, down from 52% the previous year.
Wait, let me make sure I'm fully following this.
Sure.
The auditors do this massive, extensive review. They find the missing $92 million in equipment. They locate the $200 million in overpayments.
Yes.
They literally hand over a detailed report on exactly how to fix the internal controls so it doesn't happen again.
Right.
And the ministries are simply ignoring 2/3 of the recommendations.
That is exactly what the data indicates. And this is where the narrative fundamentally shifts from the government is losing some money to the system designed to fix the problems is itself broken. Mistakes happen in any massive bureaucracy. A procurement error here, a legacy software glitch there. That's normal.
Right, human error is everywhere.
But timely corrective action is the only thing that separates an isolated, honest error from an entrenched, systemic failure.
That makes total sense. Like, if you accidentally leave your front door unlocked once, that is an isolated mistake.
Exactly.
But if your home security system alerts you that the door is open and you look at the alert on your phone, toss the phone on the couch and just go to sleep anyway,
Yes.
and you do that every single night, that is a systemic failure. You are practically inviting the consequences at that point.
That's a perfect analogy. And we have to ask why the response rate is dropping so dramatically. It's rarely some cartoon villain scenario where a bureaucrat is laughing maniacally while throwing the audit report in the paper shredder.
Right. It's probably more mundane than that.
Usually it points to severely understaffed compliance departments, or it points to political apathy, where leadership is hyper-focused on the next election cycle, rather than the tedious, unglamorous work of updating IT infrastructure.
Fixing servers doesn't win votes.
Exactly. It also points to a lack of enforcement mechanisms. Think about it. If a ministry simply ignores an audit recommendation, what is the actual penalty?
Probably nothing.
Right. If there is no financial or political consequence for ignoring the fire alarm, eventually people just stop leaving the building.
Which means the inefficiencies just compound over time. They just pile up.
Precisely.
And the source material makes it very clear that governance consistency is closely tied to delivery. The rollout of social housing programs, the approval of new private developments, the maintenance of public infrastructure.
It's all connected.
All of it relies on an administrative system that is currently turning a blind eye to 67% of the recommendations meant to fix its own leaks. If you can't fix your IT systems, you can't process land titles efficiently, the backlog just grows.
And we really must remember the impartial reality of the housing market here. The demand for housing in Jamaica is rising steadily. The population is growing. Families need places to live.
That's a constant.
But if the administrative side, the governance side, cannot keep up with that demand because it is completely bogged down in unrecorded assets and unspent infrastructure funds and ignored audits, you create an artificial bottleneck.
You constrain the land supply.
Exactly. The shortage isn't happening because the island physically ran out of dirt.
Right.
The shortage is happening because the land isn't legally cleared, properly drained, or road accessible for actual use.
So what does this all really mean for you, listening right now? We started this deep dive by talking about how a dry, bureaucratic audit report could actually be a gripping story.
And it is.
We promised to connect the government spreadsheets to the literal roof over your head. And I think the editorial insight from the Jamaica Homes news article summarizes the mechanism perfectly.
How so?
When financial systems falter, the effects tend to surface quietly. You don't see a giant explosion. What you see are delayed developments.
Exactly.
You see rising construction costs passed down quietly to the buyer. You see fewer opportunities for families to secure stable, affordable housing.
It's a slow burn.
Right. This audit is not just a look backward at mistakes that were made in the last fiscal year. It is a very loud, very clear leading indicator of how future development is going to unfold.
It is the ultimate leading indicator. The key takeaway here for anyone trying to understand the property landscape, whether you're a developer, an investor, or just a first-time homebuyer, is that governance and housing are basically two sides of the exact same coin.
You can't separate them.
You can't. If these governance systems are strengthened, if the ministries actually implement the internal controls, if they track their physical assets, and if they start aggressively responding to those audit recommendations, we will absolutely see a much better use of public resources.
It's a chain reaction.
Yes. We will see improved project delivery, which leads directly to a predictable land supply, which leads to more accessible housing. The benefits take time to materialize, but they are incredibly tangible.
But on the flip side, if the response rate just keeps dropping, the risks are just as tangible. Slower economic growth, a severely constrained land supply, and even more pressure on housing affordability. It really forces you to completely reframe how you look at a housing shortage in any city or country.
It really does. And I want to leave you with a thought to mull over as you navigate your own local real estate market, wherever you happen to be listening from today.
Oh, I like this.
We so often think of a housing crisis as a problem of physical architecture or of geographical space, or maybe a lack of raw building materials.
The physical stuff.
Right. But based on the mechanisms we've unpacked today, you really have to ask yourself, when you look at severe housing shortages or skyrocketing home prices in your own local area, how much of that is actually just an administrative crisis in disguise? Are we out there desperately trying to fix the roof when the real problem has always been the paperwork?
Now, that is a question worth taking a second look at your local zoning board over. Keep asking the big questions, and we will see you on the next deep dive.